Season 5 of The Crown on Netflix isn't even out for a couple more weeks, but it's already causing some serious controversy. Aside from the trailer that was released a few days ago, which included a couple of items from my wish list, a few select people were given a sneak preview ahead of its release. And boy, they haven't been shy about sharing their opinions about it. The first person to come forward is Britain's national treasure, Dame Judi Dench. Judi Dench took issue with a scene in the new season where the then Prince Charles apparently loses it with his own mother, Queen Elizabeth. He allegedly tells her that if they were just a regular family, social services would have arrested her and put him in a foster home because of what a bad mother she was. Yeah, this is crazy stuff. This is like Real Housewives meets Downton Abbey. We know that Charles and Elizabeth haven't had the best relationship. Between lack of affection to Elizabeth not letting him get a divorce, we've watched their relationship slowly deteriorate. But still, would the real life Prince Charles we know have said something so cringe? I mean, look, this is a prince who has a guy iron his shoelaces for him and who also brings his own toilet seat with him when he travels. I don't think he really knows anything about the struggles that real families face, much less anything about social services. He does have an anger issue, though. Watching him lose it over a leaky pen a few months ago definitely makes me think that he's capable of saying some pretty mean things when he's angry, especially behind palace walls. But why does this matter anyway? The Crown has always stretched the truth. And we know that Judi Dench is not an unbiased observer here. She's buddies with Charles's wife, Camilla. I mean, Queen Camilla. Still feels weird. So Judi Dench is probably Team Charles. And she also won an Oscar for playing Elizabeth I, one of Charles's dead relatives in Shakespeare in Love. So, once again, Team Charles. And frankly, this wouldn't be the biggest adjustment they've made to history so far. So what's the big deal here? This is what I think. The problem is where we are in time. When season 4 came out in 2020, Charles was just the Prince of Wales, which kind of made him the sideshow. We've seen him that way all our lives. And to be honest, it felt like he'd be that way forever. We knew Elizabeth was going to die someday, but we never thought it would actually happen. And definitely not before The Crown finished filming. This is why the writers of The Crown had free rein to make him the villain for much of season 4. Fast forward to November 2022, when season 5 comes out, Charles is now king, the heart of the British nation, and God knows the country could use some love right now. Putting Charles in a bad light and portraying him as the villain today, it feels different. Having these plot lines come out now almost feels like the writers are attacking not just Charles, but the entire nation. And I think people are going to get really defensive about it. I think that's why Judi Dench came out right away and said that this was damaging to the British monarchy and there needs to be a disclaimer on the show so that people wouldn't think they were watching a documentary. Of course, the writers didn't know when the crown would pass from Queen Elizabeth to King Charles. And I kind of wonder if there were any second thoughts or regrets in the writer's room when the events unfolded in September. I wonder how much they re-edited the show after Queen Elizabeth's passing. But is it really the responsibility of the show to ensure the monarchy is portrayed in a good light? I mean, should we feel bad for Charles? Or should we just kind of let him have it? He's a grown man. He can take care of himself. Right? Well, maybe not, since I'm pretty sure someone still irons the shoelaces for him. Anyway, moving on. Another person who has made his views known is John Major. He was the Prime Minister of the UK from 1990 to 1997, and that's when season 5 of The Crown takes place. He is also apparently one of the people who have had a sneak preview of the new season and has shared some thoughts about it. John Major took issue with a scene in the new season where the fictional Charles tells the fictional John Major that maybe it's time for Mummy Elizabeth to step down. The fictional Charles mentions a poll where 47% of the people thought Elizabeth should step down and Charles should take over. Fictional Charles even digs up some family history. He says that he doesn't want to end up like his great-great-grandfather, Edward VII, who had to wait till he was like 60 to take over the throne from Queen Victoria. Psych. John Major says that this exchange did not happen. And I'm inclined to believe him since he's the best source we have on this. He was there. I'm also pretty sure Charles would have never compared his situation to the situation between Edward and Edward's mother, Victoria. A little bit of history. Queen Victoria spent the last few decades of her life hiding out in a castle, mourning the loss of her husband, basically refusing to go to work. You can't compare her to Elizabeth, who couldn't stop working. She was everywhere all the time. Elizabeth even said in a speech prior to becoming queen that she dedicated her whole life, whether it be long or short, to the service of the people. And boy, was it long. Charles was very much aware that she expected to work until the very end. May she rest in peace. So imagining him suggesting to the prime minister that she stepped down early, I don't know. I find it hard to believe. I think I can understand, though, why the writers of The Crown might have created such a scene. Charles has struggled with not having a purpose. He spent most of his time just waiting for the throne. He said so himself. Most of his life, his main job is to wait to be king. I wouldn't be surprised if the thought of Elizabeth stepping down had crossed his mind before, and I can see why the writers might have put it in to try to make what Charles was going through more obvious. But really, to go from Charles's frustration to portraying him as attempting an act of treason against Queen Elizabeth, is that a bit much? People are still grieving the passing of the beloved Queen Elizabeth. It's not going to be easy to accept Charles as king. To this day, we still remember vividly the very public breakdown of his relationship with Diana. On the other hand, it has been over 20 years, and he's waited patiently on the sidelines. He's done his duty. He's done his time. Like Simba in The Lion King, Charles couldn't wait to be king. But if we found out that Simba had plotted to oust his father before his father's unfortunate demise, that would be a very different and much darker Lion King. Finally, we have another controversial inclusion in Season 5, but this one has nothing to do with Charles. It involves Charles's father, Prince Philip, and someone no one has even heard about yet in the series, Penelope Nashville. Okay, bear with me. This is going to be a bit confusing, as all these royal relations are. Penelope Nashville, or Penny, is married to the grandson of Lord Mountbatten. You probably remember Lord Mountbatten from the first 4 seasons before... Lord Mountbatten also happens to be Philip's uncle. According to people who have seen the new season, there is a scene where the show implies that the two of them had an affair. In the scene, Philip and Penny are riding in the back of a horse-drawn carriage. Philip is talking about how Elizabeth and him have grown apart, and he gives Penny his personal phone number. Their hands touch, and they have a moment. The writers of The Crown are just obsessed with Philip having an affair, even if there has never been any evidence of one. They have dropped in so many scenarios, whether it's that ballerina or the locals from when he went on that royal tour, and here we go again. So let's review the evidence. In real life, Penny and Philip did spend a lot of time together. They love to ride in horse-drawn carriages together, which I guess is kind of romantic. And Penny was also called Philip's keeper of secrets because of all that he confided in her. So yeah, maybe there was something going on between them. But we also know of a person close to Philip who probably didn't think they were having an affair. Queen Elizabeth. When Philip passed away in 2021, Penny was one of only 30 guests that Elizabeth invited to the funeral. That's hardly the kind of reception you give to someone your husband had an affair with. But really, who knows for sure? What bothers people about this storyline isn't Philip's part in it, it's actually Penny. It wouldn't be a stretch to imagine that when people watch the new season, they're gonna take the lead from the show writers and make the assumption that she did in fact have an affair with Philip. But unlike many of the characters in The Crown who get things made up about them, Penny's still alive, and people are gonna get all up in her business. On top of that, and this is just my personal view, accusing her of cheating is especially hurtful because she was actually the one that was cheated on. Her husband had an affair and left her briefly in 2010 to live with his new lady friend in the Bahamas. Penny kept quiet and didn't air the Mountbatten's dirty laundry, and this really gained the respect of Prince Philip, a Mountbatten himself. She even took care of the Mountbatten ancestral home while her husband was off canoodling. For the show to then make this accusation against her after everything she's been through just seems harsh. I think public figures understand that being in the spotlight comes with public scrutiny and sometimes false allegations. But in this case, would you really consider Penny a public figure just because she was close friends with one? When it all comes down to it, there are two sides to all of this. On the one hand, it's gotta be rough to be in the public eye and be at the whim of TV and movies that will portray you in any way that they want. This isn't a new thing. There are plenty of movies depicting prominent figures in not the most flattering light. And most recently, I watched The Empress on Netflix, where they definitely took liberties with storylines. And there's also the most famous example with Catherine the Great and her supposed sexual relationship with a horse. I can't describe it here because this is YouTube, but Google it. Did it happen? Who knows? On the other hand, doesn't getting to see depictions of such high-profile people bring them closer to everybody else, kind of shed some light on what happens behind palace walls? Maybe that's what the royal family needs. In a time where King Charles is trying to reintroduce himself to the people, doesn't seeing his struggle with his role as Prince of Wales make him more relatable?
I mean, it's one banana, Michael. What could it cost? $10?
I know seeing the way Elizabeth fulfilled her duties while also navigating her personal life gave me a whole new respect for her. And also, I kind of finally understand why Margaret drank so much. At the end of the day, the controversy has at least reminded everybody that this is just a drama series. It's not entirely true. It's also a good reminder to not believe everything we see, whether it be on social media or TV.
La La Land.
Okay, so that's what I think. Now I want to hear what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to mark your calendars for November 9th. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this.